Household Hazardous Waste webinar, and Pete Flood is going to be talking to us today.
Great.
Yep.
Okay. Thanks, Karen. My name is Pete Flood. I'm a compliance enforcement manager with the Louisville Metro Department of Public Works and the Waste Management District. And today's topic is going to be household hazardous waste. And it's one of those things that a lot of people have laying around their home and really don't know what to do. So I am going to start talking about it. So hazardous waste is a category, and household hazardous waste is something that falls underneath of it. But generally, you have regulated and non-regulated material. If the same product, the same chemicals can actually be in both of those categories, but in one, the rules are much more strict because you have worker safety, the exposures are much longer, and then you have household hazardous waste, which is something that in most cases, it carries the same hazards, but the usage is so much different that you can have it in your home. So a little bit more about what that is, and as you can see from the images, that probably looks like a lot of people's shelves in maybe their garage, but it's any unwanted household product labeled as flammable, toxic, corrosive, or reactive. And that can be a lot of different things. So oil-based paint, antifreeze, used motor oil cleaners, rechargeable batteries, all those things can fall under that, and many, many more. So the dangers, as I said, the dangers of these are just as serious as other waste that's used in industry. Obviously, fire is one of those that's high on that list. Gasoline, thinners, lighter fluids. These are things that are all over our houses, inside and in the garage, in your car. Explosion hazards. These are not, I mean, in the sense of somebody having a dynamite in their home. Explosion hazards are much more about pool chemicals, oxidizers, and those types of chemicals that when they get mixed with other things, they can create a flammable or explosive hazard. The toxicity to humans, these are things everybody's kind of heard of. Roundup, I think you see the commercials all over the place now. These are things that can harm the person, by chemical burns, immediate acute things on into more long-term chronic things and birth defects and other things. So a lot of the times when you think of the toxicity and things to human, especially longer term issues, it's more about exposure and duration of exposure. It's in a sense, it's kind of like taking medications. It's all about dose. You can take a medication safely at a certain dose, but at a higher dose you can't without causing harm. And the same thing about duration, how long you can take stuff. And then there's the stuff that's harmful to the environment. Gets into the drinking water, rivers, lakes, and stuff. Lawn fertilizers is a very good example of that. You get a lot of runoff. You have a lot of runoff from farms into lakes and streams that actually can cause algae blooms in lakes and stuff. Actually, I think we've been hearing more and more about algae blooms, but it can also rob water of its oxygen, causing fish kills and so on and so forth. Some of the things that, how do you know if something's a hazard? And there's lots of different naming things, but generally these are the symbols that you may see on a lot of the products that you buy, may or you may not. Health hazard, flame, these little things, the exploding bomb, those are all pretty good. A couple of them that I would point out is the one in the lower left called flame over circle. And those are more of your oxidizers. Oxidizers are products that they can create their own oxygen. They don't necessarily have to have an oxygen to do it. So whenever you get an oxidizer fire, it's usually pretty intense, and it's usually very difficult to put out. Then the one in the upper right, which is the exclamation point, those are things that have a specific hazard, like it's a skin sensitizer, meaning that once you've had a burn to this, then you're more likely to get it a second time. So that has actually happened to me before. So whenever you see that exclamation mark, it's something to pay attention to. Skull and crossbones, I think anybody sees that one, they know that I probably don't want to be around that one. So these symbols are there on a lot of containers, but they're not on all. So you can't just rely on seeing these types of things. So where else can you get information? There's a thing called a safety data sheet, and that used to be called a material safety data sheet. They shortened it up. And I'm not going to go into each one of these, obviously, but where you can get these from most stores that you buy stuff from, a Lowe's or a Home Depot, you can actually request that they give you a SDS. But in all reality, nowadays, you're probably best just to do a search on SDS.com, I believe it is. And you can pretty much find an SDS for any product that you have. It's really good because a lot of times you can get an SDS that's been sitting on the shelf for 10 years and maybe the product has changed. So it's usually better to go get the most recent one. And you know, this actually tells you just about everything about the product, including the first aid measures. Somebody gets exposed, one of the things that they really want to know is, well, what did you get exposed to? And the hospital will actually look up the SDS. They'll take a look and they'll call the manufacturer to see some of the medical care, more advanced medical care can be done. There's a thing called Chemtrek that is set up by industry just for those calls 24/7. And then some of the other ones that I would be looking for is the disposal considerations. Although I can tell you from experience that on most SDS, the disposal options tell you to contact your local waste industry or waste authority for a household hazardous materials drop-off site or so. So those are the types of things that you can get from that SDS. So where does it go and how is it handled? Obviously, household hazardous materials can go to our site at 7501 Grade Lane, but what do they do with it? How do they handle it? And I can tell you that it really depends a whole lot on what the product is. And sometimes they will package these. They don't process anything at the has-been, but they package based upon what the product is. And it'll go to a different facility depending upon how it's going to be handled. So anything that's going to come in that has that's an acid or a base, they'll generally use neutralization, where they'll adjust that pH to a neutral pH, and then it becomes a whole lot less hazardous. A lot of solvents, those types of materials can actually be used in high temperature incineration to dispose of it. More staying away from the chlorines, but a lot of it will go to fuel blending, and it'll go to, like, some cement kilns actually use it as fuel, but it's blended with other light chemicals to come up with the right flash point and burning point for what they're trying to do. Other things use biological disposal, and a lot of that can be like soils that have petroleum spilled on it, gasoline, fuel oils, things like that. And what they'll do is they'll take it to a special place where they'll introduce enzymes that eat the petroleum component until it's gone, and then the enzymes die off, and then the dirt is pretty much back to its normal state. Some materials have to be landfilled, and those are typically specially designed landfills for some, and which could have double liners, double leachate systems, which make sure that if there is a leak, it's going to be handled. It's a much higher safety level, although most landfills today are built to handle many of the household hazardous materials that are out there, because it's going to be in the trash. And then there's to recycle or reuse. You know, you can get a like a safety clean that could take a product. They'll put it into like a big pressure cooker. They'll bring it to a certain temperature, and the chemical, petroleum chemical, will turn into a vapor and kind of goes into another container, and it leaves all the heavies, sediments in the pressure cooker, and you have a clean solvent again. So that's a way that's done. That's distillation and filtration and sedimentation, just depends upon the properties of the chemical. So there are a lot of different ways to handle these things. And you know, when it comes down to it, your best thing is to take it to a household hazardous materials site and let us do all that for you. So some quick tips with household hazardous materials: always read the instructions. Always store them properly, particularly when it comes to the oxidizers. See so many situations when I was with the fire department where people would store oxidizers, mostly pool chemicals, on the same shelf or below their gas for their lawnmower or something like that, their motor oils or transmission fluids. Those things don't mix. So just be aware of what you have, read the directions, and how to store material. All of those things will prevent risk of exposure, explosion, fire, leaking, and the other sorts. Always keep your household hazardous materials away from foodstuffs. You'll see a lot of restaurants that will get the big dreaded D or B, or I don't know if they have a D, but a B or a C. A lot of that comes because they had a cleaner next to the foodstuffs. And you should always make sure that you place them in a safe place if you have children or if you have grandchildren that are going to come over. And know that you can call the Poison Control Center, but they're also going to want to know what that product is, which takes me to the number 4 bullet point. If there's leftovers, if you're actually going to pour some of that chemical off into another container, pour it back into the original container as much as you can, or label it so that you know what it is. Somebody else coming along and getting to a container that's unlabeled, thinking that it's water, could get really harmed by that. But don't mix things. Chlorine and chlorine, what is it? Chlorine and bleach. That's the same thing. But you mix the two. It's two very common cleaning materials that if you mix, you will get a reaction, in which case it can be very bad for you. We always want to look to reduce HHW when you can. So we always want to be looking for other products that are out there. There's the EPA's Safer Choice program that you can go and take a look at. And there's also making your own home recipes. I know that there's lots of them for cleaners. glass cleaners and stuff like that. If you do that, then you can reduce, number one, what you have to buy, but also you don't have so much of that stuff laying around, and it's easily, you can mix however much you need. So reducing is always better. So this is the disposal if you have these things, and the HHW site, the has-been is what we call it, is actually out by the outer loop landfill on Grade Lane. It's kind of down and around the corner. You have to follow the drive all the way to the back and turn in left. So then you would see a sign out there that not the one that you see in the image here, but it's a street sign that says has been, and it's really big. And just keep following the signs until you get to the very back of that road, and it's on the left, and it's open Tuesday through Saturday, 9:30 to 4. We do it Tuesday through Saturday to give people that work during the week an opportunity to get to use the site. What do we accept? We accept pretty much most household hazardous materials, even down to the propane tanks, smoke detectors, solvents and degreasers. We'll even take a little bit of asbestos floor tiles. We do get people that do remove asbestos in their home, although before you do so, you would definitely want to look up some material as far as EPA and how to safely do it yourself, if there is a safe way to do it yourself. So that's some of the things that we'll take, and you can always find these things on the LouisvilleKY.gov website. Another thing about what we do accept, and we don't have a whole lot of this anymore in the world, but the old home chemistry sets had some really wicked stuff in them, and even down to things that are extremely toxic, radioisotope type stuff, low level stuff, but it's there and you don't want your kids playing with it. But if you come across some of these things, be really careful with it, because some of these things over time, as they degrade, they can become something that is much different, like an organic peroxide type thing where it's all crystals after it evaporates, and suddenly if you grab it, it can ignite or explode. We actually received some of that stuff at the has-been not too long ago, and the people that transported it there were very lucky. So if you have an old chemistry set, give us a call and see how you should handle it, or if you should handle it at all. More importantly, things that are not accepted. We can't handle anything in large containers. We don't have the ability to pull them off of there, to pour them off and give you the container back. We just don't have that ability. If you bring it in 5 gallon or less, we can generally handle it. More than 25 pounds of asbestos, helium tanks. Actually, the best thing that you can do is go to that manufacturer and see how they tend to want to handle it. Some cylinders are all different, but generally, once the container is rendered harmless and it can't hold pressure, then it just becomes a piece of metal that can go to a scrap metal processing facility. I wouldn't put that in your curbside recycling or your trash. We can't take latex paint. We actually was accepting that for a while and hope to one day get back to it if it's good latex paint. But right now we're not in a position to recycle the material. So what we are telling people is that you should harden up the latex paint and then you can put it in with your normal waste stream. But it's really important that you make sure that it's hardened up so that when it gets into the garbage truck and it crushes, that paint's not going to come running out mixed with any other kind of liquids that are there. And if that truck does leak, we won't have paint strips of paint on the roadway, which if you look around, sure enough, you'll find it in many neighborhoods where somebody has done that. Ammunition, that's one of the things that we can't accept. It's just a little bit higher hazard. We have a really difficult time with an outlet for it. What we try to tell people is that if the ammunition is good, it's take it to a gun range or contact the police department where they may be able to get it to people that can use it. And so that's the better thing there. We also can't take expired medications, as we to accept certain medications, you have to have a certain level of training. Generally in Louisville, it's either through a secure drop box, or it is at one of the events, like the pop-up drop-off events that we have. And narcotics agents or DEA agents actually staff that and accept the material. Household batteries. And this is one of the things that batteries you may notice has been in a little bit more of the news lately, because there's been several fires. Number one, it started on some airplanes early on with lithium ion batteries. And they do carry a pretty big hazard. And typically, we've been seeing more fires in recycling facilities where people have put those lithium ion top batteries in there, and then they'll get in with some other stuff if they're damaged, and you're more likely to have a fire with those. So at the has-been, we do accept these types of batteries. What we would want you to do with any type of rechargeable is take the ends so that it gives less likely to have a contact and reaction with another battery. And if it is a damaged battery, to make sure that you put it in a couple baggies individually, so that that bag cannot, so that the material inside can't come into contact with anything else. And I would also suggest that you do that inside of your home or your business by taking care of those batteries when they're done in that manner. The non-rechargeable batteries, while they are recyclable, the cost of that recycling is extremely high. It's been a while, but the EPA had the alkaline style batteries, single-use batteries. They had to reformulate those to take out a lot of the hazards involved with that. And while there's still some material in there, it actually made it safe for landfill disposal. So while we do accept them at the has-been, we really kind of prefer that people take and put those in their normal waste stream, but only the alkaline non-rechargeables. These are the other batteries that are out there. These are the rechargeables, but you also have the lead acid batteries. These are ones like your car or your lawnmower or ATV or those types of things. Just be cautious with those because they do contain an acid. So you don't want to spill those or get those that acid on you. A lot of the car batteries, we don't get a whole lot of those, because typically when you purchase a new battery, you turn in the old battery and they give you a rebate on that. It's because the batteries actually contain a lot of material that is highly recyclable. But just be careful with the ones that contain the acid. Yes, we do take the CFLs and the fluorescent tube LED bulbs at the has-been. We've been accepting those for quite some time. There are some other options that are out there, like Batteries Plus. They'll accept many of these batteries. I think you would have to talk to them about their current pricing or rebate on some of these materials, because some of them do actually have something where you can get money for them. these are many of the bulbs and stuff that they do take. Fees may apply. That's what I would tell you. Paint, and this is the latex paint. And you know, while that program's suspended, you know, just like I told you earlier, the latex paint's not hazardous. So if it's dry, it's just basically a solid waste at that point. The oil-based is, you know, if it's still good, give it away. Of course, that goes with latex paint as well. But you know, oil-based paint should go to the household hazardous materials drop-off site so that it can be handled appropriately. You can't really dry that stuff out because it's oil-based, obviously. So another thing is if the container is empty, and when we say empty, where most of the material is drained out properly, once you do that, you can put that into the trash. Don't put a quarter can full of paint into the trash. But if it's drained, just like tilt it up, let it drain, and then you can put it in there. Otherwise, it should go to the has been. Of course, Habitat Restore will take full and unused containers of paint that they can use at their stores, which is a good thing. Oil and gasoline. We do take both of those things at the has-been. What I will tell you is that we also accept motor oil, used motor oil, and used antifreeze at our other full-service recycling centers. So one's on Dixie, one's on Outer Loop, and the other one's on Hubbard's Lane. So they're actually in 3 different locations, and you can get those on our website. But definitely, we do take these. A lot of people call and ask us, well, can you pour it off for us and let me keep my container? And the answer to that is yes. Do we have any questions from the?
Yep. At this point, thank you, Pete. That was great. We have the chat feature and also the Q&A feature. If anybody on the line has any specific questions, we would be happy to answer. And one of the slides about the batteries included the logo for Recycle Coach. So I just want to reiterate that is an app that's specific to Louisville. If you download Recycle Coach, it will ask where you live and put your address in, and you'll get all the information that we put on there. So you'll, and then you can always search items in the what goes where tool search bar, and it will give you information like it shows in the screenshot there. So household batteries and light bulbs and things like that are very highly searched items, very commonly searched. I don't see any questions. Diane, you should watch too, just in case it goes to the host. If there are no questions, or if you specifically don't have any questions, thanks for attending, and we will wrap up. Oh, let's see.
Oh, there is a question.
Yeah. Expired over-the-counter medications, cough medicine, NyQuil, etc.
Okay, so we can't take those out at the has-been. What you would want to do is look for one of our pop-up drop-off events, and those are on our webpage. I think we have one coming up in March.
March 27th.
And that one's out in the southwest part of the city.
I think as far as medication drop-off, some Walgreens locations also have just some consistent boxes, I guess, where you can drop off prescription medication for sure. I'm not sure if they would take some of that over the counter, because some of that stuff's pretty strong too. But you could certainly ask.
Another question that I see is asking about the 1 pound and 20 pound propane tanks. If we recycle those, actually, what we do is we have an agreement with Blue Rhino, and once we build up a certain number of them, they'll come back and get them. And they have to still be static tested if they're not, but they would generally go back into circulation as a propane tank. So we're just reusing them. Once they get to where they don't test properly, a static test properly, then those materials would be recycled at that point. Obviously, they would remove any remaining gas and render it safe, and then it would be recycled, yes, as metal.
All right, those were great questions. We're still here if you have any other ones, but also a reminder, next week we'll be back with backyard composting. And then
There was another question.
Oh, yep, go ahead.
The question is, isn't it preferred to recycle the non-hazardous batteries than to dispose of them? Or is it difficult for them to be recycled? Yeah, the amount of recycling content within one of those batteries is extremely small. It is possible, there's no doubt. The cost of that is $1.15 a pound. And when we accept so many of those, it can take, at one point, it was taking up like a third of the cost to even operate the has-been. So you have to, we will recycle them, but at a point where we're not getting hardly anything from them, at a certain point, it becomes more cost-effective to landfill. I hate to say that, but sometimes that is the case.
And I would say if you collect them at home, well, maybe try not to go through so many batteries, but if you do, collect a lot at once, because even just the sustainability factors of driving to take them, collect a lot before you would take them to the has-been.
Buying rechargeable would be probably a better situation there.
Pete, can you clarify the propane tank again? I didn't understand that. You said that we have a deal with Blue Rhino. So as a collection, do we collect those?
Yes, we'll take them at the has-been. And generally when we get 100 or 150 of them, we will give Blue Rhino a call and they'll come by and pick them up at no charge to us.
Oh, okay.
So what they're doing is they're getting the tanks back in circulation instead of them. It's a good tank. Most of them are good. So they can get them back into circulation. They don't have to buy new tanks to sell. They can just continue to do it. And you have a lot of that at like a Lowe's or a Home Depot where you just go exchange the tank. Mm-hmm. Some people don't want to do that. They don't want another tank. They just need to get rid of the tank. So they can bring it to us and then we'll get it to Blue Rhino to get it back into circulation as long as it passes its test.
About the pop-up drop-offs, if somebody tries to return one at one of the pop-up drop-offs, we just have them take it right back home and tell them to go to the has-been then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, the reason that we don't take household hazardous materials at our drop-off events is because, typically if somebody's transporting a few items, it's really not that big of a deal. But if you start to group large amounts of household hazardous materials, then you have to transport them. And that's where, you've got, 100 propane tanks. We don't want to be driving down the road with 100 propane tanks. So the hazard goes way up for these drop-off events. And typically you would have to have a specialized contractor that could transport to to separate and transport. That's why we just prefer that, and while we operate the site out there 5 days a week, it's always available to people.
Those were all very good questions. Again, we're still here. If you have any more you want to put in the Q&A.
Amy's getting loud.
If there are no more questions, of course, thank you so much for coming, and we'll be posting this recording on our website, specifically on the Household Hazardous Waste web pages, and join us next week about backyard composting.
Stop record?
Yeah.
Oops.